Welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Happy Thursday. My name is Chris Check. I am sitting in for Cy Kellett, your usual host. Cy is about as far away from San Diego as I think you can get. I don't know. I'll take a look at the map and be sure. He's in Perth, Australia, bringing the gospel to the four corners of the earth, like Pope Francis asked him to do. And I'm sitting in for him. He'll be back in this chair next week, Monday or Tuesday, I think Monday. 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884 to talk to today's guest. And today's guest is the same guest for both hours. And it's senior apologist at Catholic Answers, Jimmy Akin. Jimmy, how are you, brother?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I said senior apologist at Catholic Answers, which is true depending what we mean by at, but actually you are not at here Catholic Answers or in here 2020 Gillespie. You are in Fayetteville,
Arkansas. Yes,
beautiful Fayetteville, Arkansas.
There are other Fayettevilles too.
Yeah, you know what I found out today? There's a Columbus, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. There's lots of Columbuses, but there's one in Columbus. There's one in Mississippi. Okay, Fayetteville. Are the leaves changing?
Not yet, but it is getting cooler. It was 38 degrees the other night.
Oh,
so almost down to freezing.
Okay, that's unusual here.
Yeah, but it was 80 degrees today, so it's still going up and down.
Good. But you do have like maple trees or something.
We have actual seasons, yes. And in the Ozark Mountains, the leaves turn yellow and red and orange in just a few weeks.
Yeah, very good. All right, we'll watch your Instagram page for pictures of. Do you have an Instagram?
I'll have to create one if you want to watch it.
888-318-7884. Open forum for 2 hours. Any questions you have about the Catholic faith, scripture, doctrine, practices, anything, as Jimmy likes to say, except sports ball.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what's coming up on Mysterious World?
Well, so today we released our regular Friday episode, and this time it's part 2 of a 2-part look at the 1890s mystery airships. In 1896 and 1897, there was a wave of sightings of strange airships in various parts of the nation. It started at the end of 1896 in California, and then in the spring of 1897, it spread all over a large chunk of the United States, and then they all vanished. And there were hundreds of reports of these. They were printed up in the newspapers. Very credible local people in different areas reported seeing them. There were even reports of the crews of the airships coming into contact with local individuals who talked about them. And a lot of people in the modern ufology movement have looked back on the 1896, 1897 airships as early contact with aliens, as early UFOs, possibly the first modern UFOs. However, that's not what they were.
No.
They were something else entirely. And in today's episode, we not only tell you what they really were, we tell you who was responsible.
Was it the Chinese?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to have to listen to the episode to find out. 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin. Jimmy, there's always tons of questions. Why don't we get right to it?
Sure.
Trent in New York, watching on Catholic.com. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. So I'm calling because I have recently learned about a number of reported Eucharistic miracles in Protestant circles. Now, these are not as numerous or well-studied as Catholic Eucharistic miracles, so they could just, be fabrications. But in the off chance that there was a supernatural explanation for at least one of them, I'm curious what that would be. And I also wanted to ask about an explanation that's been given for the saving of the thief on the cross, which was that even though he wasn't baptized, he was saved by God's miraculous means rather than the means that God instituted for us to follow. And so I was wondering if something similar could be happening with the Eucharist in those reports.
Okay. So first, before I provide a synopsis of an answer, I'll recommend an episode of Mysterious World that I did a couple of years ago where I actually deal with this question. It's episode number 220. It's on Eucharistic miracles, and you can find it by going to mysterious.fm/220. And in that episode, I talk about Eucharistic miracles outside of Catholic circles. And in fact, I show a photograph in the video version, which you can find on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy Akin. I show an image, a photograph that was taken of a reported Eucharistic miracle in an Anglican church. And unfortunately, in that particular case, I think the explanation was actually natural. I don't think that one was actually a Eucharistic miracle. I think it was a reflection. And so it was a lighting phenomenon where light reflected out of a chalice in a way that made it look like from a certain angle, it made it look like there was a host hovering above the chalice. But I don't think that's what it really was. Having said that, I have no problem with the idea of Eucharistic miracles outside the Catholic Church because God loves all his children. And so he can do miracles anywhere for anybody, regardless of the degree of knowledge they have of him. If you think about, for example, healing, well, people get sick all over the world. God's children get sick, and they pray to God, however they understand him, and he can heal them. He can intervene in order to bring them back to health. And even if they don't understand him perfectly in this life, well, they will in the next. And so we have healing reports from all over the world, from people from different cultures, also with other miraculous phenomena like apparitions of the Virgin Mary. Well, those aren't just confined to the Catholic Church. Those are found in numerous different faith communities in the Christian world and even a little bit outside the Christian world. The Virgin Mary reportedly, for example, she appeared in Central America to help convert Native Americans. Another saint, at least during her lifetime, reportedly bilocated to Native Americans here in North America that helped convert them and prepare them for the coming of missionaries. And in 1968, Our Lady apparently appeared in Zaytun, which is a suburb of Cairo. She appeared at a Coptic Orthodox church, and she was witnessed not just by a few Copts. She was witnessed actually initially by Muslims, and then very quickly by up to 250,000 Copts, Catholics, Protestants, and even Muslims. And there are photographs that were taken of her and the light phenomena that accompanied her. I actually have an episode of Mysterious World coming up on that in December. So we see God performing miraculous activity for all kinds of people because he loves them. And the same thing can be true of Jesus in the Eucharist. So I would expect that there would be Eucharistic miracles wherever people have a devotion to Jesus in the Eucharist. And that would be not only the Catholic Church, but also the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Oriental Orthodox Church, the Assyrian Church of the East, and maybe even in some Protestant communities, because there are people in the Protestant community who have a devotion to Jesus in the Eucharist, and God could respond to that. Now, what they frequently do not have in Protestant circles is valid holy orders. But that doesn't mean that valid holy orders are completely lacking in the Protestant community, because sometimes you will have Eastern Orthodox priests who become Protestant or Catholic priests who become Protestant, and they carry their valid holy orders with them. And even in the absence of valid holy orders, if someone has a strong devotion to Jesus in the Eucharist, God could respond to that in ways that are known to him. So I wouldn't rule out I don't rule out miracle reports or supernatural reports just on the basis of faith, what faith community they occur in. And I can see situations where if God chose, he might perform Eucharistic miracles in Protestant communities.
How's that, Trent? There was a second part to your question?
It was folded in
No,
about
okay.
could the good thief who was
Roger.
saved in an extraordinary
Good.
way be a parallel to this? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah. How's that, Trent?
That's great. Thank you so much, Jimmy. You hit on a number of other topics of interest to me as well, so really appreciate the informative response.
No problem. I would mention the key barrier is going to be the fact that most Protestant communities don't have valid holy orders. It tends to be here and there. And without those, they wouldn't, without some other kind of special miracle, they wouldn't have a valid Eucharist. But they may still have Eucharistic devotion that God could work with in some way.
888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH, Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett, Jimmy Aiken, our guest for 2 hours, open forum. There'll be a line open here in a minute, folks. Ava in Ontario, Canada, watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching on YouTube. Ava, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, thank you. My question is, I was once talking with a Protestant friend, and he was trying to say that the rapture is supported biblically. And one of the verses that he mentioned was in Revelation. I think he was talking about Revelation 3:10, where it says, "Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth." And if you look at it at first glance, it looks like it could point at something like the rapture. So what could you say to object to the claim that it's supporting the rapture?
Okay, so the idea that there's going to be a future event where believers in Christ get caught up to be with him, well, that's true. St. Paul talks about this event in 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Catholics don't tend to call it a rapture, but all Christians acknowledge this because St. Paul talks about it. When you have it called the rapture, which is only a theory in certain select groups within Protestantism, not even all Protestants believe it, but it's understood not just to be a future event where we get caught up to be with Jesus. It's understood to be a future event that occurs a little bit more than 1,000 years before the end of the world. And that's a very problematic claim. It's something that only really appeared in the early 1800s, just about 200 years ago. And so it's a recent idea. It's not one that goes all the way through Christian history. And there are a bunch of problems with the rapture. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through them all right now, but if you Google Jimmy Aiken and rapture, or if you go to Catholic.com and type in rapture, a bunch of resources will appear that you can use for more background on why the rapture is problematic. Having said that, what about the verse that you mentioned, Revelation 3:10? Well, one of the problems for believers in the rapture is that the beginning of Revelation very clearly deals with events in the first century. It begins with 7 messages to 7 churches that are actually all on the same road system in what's modern Turkey, or what was then Asia Minor. So they're the 7 churches of Asia. And what some Protestants have tried to do is treat these as if they're a map of church history. So you start with the Church of Ephesus, and they'll say, well, that pertains to the first century church. And then as you walk through the other 6 churches, ending up in the Church of Laodicea, they'll say this is like a map of church history. And the reason they say that is they want to make most of the book of Revelation about the future. And the end of the book clearly pertains to the future, but there's no gap early in the book that you could fit 2,000 years of church history into. And so that's what's motivated some people to come up with this walk through church history interpretation of the messages to the 7 churches of Asia. However, as Protestant scholars have pointed out, there is absolutely no ground for that in the text. This is pure speculation. There is nothing in the text that suggests that these churches are a map of church history. Having said that, well, in which of the 7 churches do we find Revelation 3:10? Well, it's actually in the next to last of the messages. So out of the 7 messages, this is number 6. And it's to the Church of Philadelphia. And as part of this message, Jesus tells the Church of Philadelphia, because you have kept the word of my patient endurance, I also will keep you from the hour of testing that is about to come upon the whole inhabited world, to put to test those who live on the earth. So 2 problems for the rapture view. First problem, even if you buy the walk through church history view, we're not at the end of church history, because there's another message to the Church of Laodicea that would apply after this. So that creates a chronology problem for when the rapture would occur, because typically what you have is people saying, well, the letter to the Church of Laodicea is an evil, corrupt church at the end of time, just before the second coming. But Jesus is saying, I'm going to keep you from this trial to the Church of Philadelphia, which is earlier than that on this view. But then there's a second and even bigger problem for the idea this is referring to the rapture, and that's the fact this is written to a church in the 1st century. Even if you think that there's a secondary layer of meaning that pertains to the course of church history in these 7 messages, the primary meaning deals with churches that really were in Asia Minor in the 1st century. So this message, in the literal sense of the text, is to the Church of Philadelphia in the 1st century. And therefore, what Jesus is telling the Church of Philadelphia is that he's going to protect that church, not all believers everywhere, but that church, from a trial that is about to come upon the whole Roman world in the 1st century. And so this is not about a future rapture. This is about Jesus assuring one local church he's going to protect them during a 1st century crisis.
Ava, Jimmy gave a very thorough answer there, and I'm afraid we got to go to break. In addition to the resources that Jimmy recommended, our friend Paul Figman a number of years ago wrote a book called The Rapture Trap from Ascension Press. I recommend that to you. My friends, at shop.catholic.com right now we're celebrating Big Catholic Deal Days. I assure you, I did not invent that name. That's the crack marketing department here at Catholic Answers. Big Catholic Deal Days. What does that mean? It means there's a $1 book sale. All of our 20 Answers books are on sale for $1, including all the ones that Jimmy Akin wrote, including the one on Bible prophecies. So apropos the question we just had there, and also all ebooks. So 100 titles in all. Just $1 at shop.catholic.com. Right back after this.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
This is Sister Lucia Trainer of the Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist. Catholic radio is an apostolate that is immediate, interactive, effective, and worldwide. It stimulates listeners to follow the teachings of the Church, brings Scripture closer to us, helps those who wrestle with questions of conscience, and allows us to celebrate the joy of our faith every day.
The world needs EWTN Catholic Radio, now more than ever.
Eight 318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. Chris Check sitting in for Cy Kellett. who's in Perth, Australia, will be back in this chair on Monday. My guest for both hours, senior apologist at Catholic Answers, Jimmy Akin. And as always, lots of questions. So we're just going to go straight to him. Cecil in Murrieta, California, listening on EWTN Sirius XM 130. Cecil, you're not very far away from us. You should come visit sometime.
Oh, yeah. It was just at your conference. It was great.
Oh,
First
good.
time.
Yeah, good. Well, Jimmy gave a great talk.
Oh, he sure did. I really appreciated that. Yes, Jimmy. So, quick question: the Ignatius of Antioch, and I could be said also of other church fathers, but when I've talked to Protestants, sometimes they'll say, "Well, how are you sure that, let's say, the letters that Saint Ignatius of Antioch wrote as he was making his way to be martyred in Rome, I believe it was, how do you know that those documents have not been corrupted over the centuries, and especially after the Reformation, in order to tweak, they were tweaked in order to make a case for the Catholic Church, so to speak, I guess. So, like, for example, Ignatius has things he says about the Eucharist and so on, and administrative aspects in terms of bishops and so forth. So I really did some research on this on my own. I couldn't find anything that would, of course, there's a lot that having to do with the Scriptures and the fact that the veracity of Scripture. There's lots of that, but there's not very much that I could find online regarding the validity or the reliability, I guess is the word for the letters and the consistency throughout the centuries.
Yeah, great question.
Okay, so this is a question that actually came up at the time of the Protestant Reformation, because Protestants were denying various Catholic teachings. Different groups of them were denying different teachings, but Catholics would respond by saying, look right here in Ignatius of Antioch. I mean, he's right there at the dawn of the 2nd century. He's writing around the year 108. And he says all this stuff that supports Catholic positions. And a challenge that was made at the time was that, maybe these have been tampered with in some way. And, that's not implausible in that in ancient literature, stuff was copied by hand, and sometimes people would improve in their eyes on what they were reading. They might shorten it to make it more readable. They might lengthen it to flesh out some points. But that leads to the creation of what are called different recensions of a text. A recension is basically an addition. And so, in fact, there are 3 notable recensions or editions of Ignatius's letters. There's what's known as the short recension, the middle recension, and the long recension. And so, we've discovered these recensions in manuscript science. We've found copies of them in different monasteries and libraries and things like that. And the question is, for scholars, well, which one of these is original? Well, this is a question that actually was tackled in significant measure by Protestant scholars, including scholars like J.B. Lightfoot. And what they concluded is, one of these is original. And that's the recension, the version that you find printed in modern books of patristics, including Protestant ones. There's a very famous set that was produced in the 19th century by Philip Schaff, among others. It's sometimes called the 38-volume set, because that's how many volumes are in it. And it has, the standard recension of Ignatius of Antioch that was agreed to by Protestant scholars, because this is a Protestant set. Now, do we have 100% infallible certitude that the scholars have identified exactly the correct manuscripts? Well, no, we don't, because manuscript science is a science, and therefore it's never 100%. But in terms of what does the evidence say about the writings of Ignatius of Antioch, there's not substantial disagreement between Protestant and Catholic scholars on these. Today, both Protestant scholars and Catholic scholars are of the opinion that the established manuscripts that you'll find in a standard collection of his letters are the ones that are reliable. There are other recensions, but those typically only get printed for scholars and specialists to look at. So the standard versions you're going to find of his letters are agreed to by both Protestant scholars and Catholic scholars, and there's not really disagreement on this. So if someone wants to challenge his writings and say they've been doctored, well, they're going up against Protestant scholarship, and they're going to need to do more than just speculate, because you can speculate anything you want. I mean, an atheist could say, how do you know that the New Testament teaches the existence of God? Maybe it's been tampered with over time. Well, okay, there's a mountain of scholarship, though, that would indicate the New Testament does teach that God exists. You can't just speculate something to get out of evidence. That's not explaining the evidence. It's dismissing the evidence. And the evidence we have is that Ignatius of Antioch, around the year 108, really was supporting the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, and the episcopacy is distinct from the priesthood and the diaconate and other Catholic distinctives.
888-318-7884, Catholic Answers Live. My guest, Jimmy Akin, for both hours, right back after this.
Why We're Catholic is the one book you can hand to anyone to invite them into or back to the Catholic faith. With more than 400,000 copies sold, Trent Horn's book has had a #1 ranking on Amazon.com for 5 years running. Now available in softcover, bulk cases, ebook, and on Audible. Find out what the excitement is all about. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore. Visit whywe'recatholic.com.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
What if the voice of your deepest doubts about Catholicism rose up in the form of a human being and challenged you to defend your most foundational beliefs? That's the task apologist Trent Horn took upon himself in his new book, Devil's Advocate, a dialogue with his own best objections against the faith that he professes and defends. You can stand up against your doubts, and Trent will show you how. Pick up your copy of Devil's Advocate today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Groovy Thursday at Catholic Answers Live, the great Nicholas Check on guitar. Catholic Answers Live, 888-318-7884. My guest, Jimmy Akin. I'm Chris Check, sitting in for Cy Kellett. Sean in Port Perry, Canada. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live.
Hello, Chris.
How are you?
I'm not sure whether this is a Chris question or a Jimmy question.
We'll both answer it.
And the reason I say that, Chris, is that when I have raised this matter before, you have been very supportive. And what I'm wanting to talk about is the lack of access to some of the most basic Catholic resources, such as, for example, Fundamentals of Catholic Doctrine by Ludwig Ott, or the documents of Vatican II, or even the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There's no way for a blind person to read any of those. And there are a number of books about Catholicism that are sold on Amazon that are in Kindle format, so theoretically a blind person could buy that book and the Amazon Echo would narrate it, but they haven't enabled text to speech. All someone needs to do is tick a box on a computer screen to do that, but it doesn't seem to matter how many times one phones Amazon and complains about it and explains that one is blind and just wants to read the book. They take the report and nobody does anything about it.
Okay, so what's your question for me, Sean? How can I help?
Because I'm not rich or famous or influential, and I'm getting nowhere trying to do something about this on my own, is there anybody at Catholic Answers or anybody that you could put me in touch with that has the ability to contact people in authority to bring this issue to their attention?
Well, so you don't need Catholic Answers to help. You just need a little bit of information about who to go to. Talking to Amazon about this is not going to help, because Amazon does not determine whether or not a book that's available in Kindle format can be read aloud or not. That's determined by the publisher. And so instead of complaining to Amazon, you should complain to the publishers. You should call the publisher of whatever document you want and say, I'd like this available in Kindle format, and I'd like to be able to have it read to me via text to speech, because I'm blind and so I can't just read it. So please make it available. If it's already available, please go back into your Kindle platform and uncheck the box that prevents it from being read via text to speech. It's a simple setting on the back end of the Kindle platform where you either check or don't check a box, and it will be available for text to speech. So you don't want to talk to Amazon about that. You want to talk to the publisher of an individual book about that. So that's one option for you. There are other options. Now, I'm not blind. I have been blind in the past. The men in my family get cataracts at preternaturally young ages. And so I actually spent more than a month blind in both eyes before I could get in to get the first cataract surgery. And so I've spent time in a blind state. I know what that's like, and you have my sympathies. It opened a bunch of new perspectives for me, so to speak. I had not had the experience of being blind before, but I did go through that. What I also go through is a learning disability known as dyslexia. I have functionally overcome my dyslexia so that I read, by the time I was in 5th grade, I was reading at an 8th grade level, but reading in print form is not easy for me. It is much easier for me to have audio text read to me. And so even though I may have a printed text in front of me, I always want it read to me out loud. And I sympathize with you that there are various books that seemingly foolishly the publisher has prevented text-to-speech software from working with them out of some kind of rights issue. And so I've developed workarounds. One of the things you can do is use a text-to-speech system that's built into your computer. Now, I happen to use a Mac, and Mac has text-to-speech that's very easy. You basically go into the settings, and you set a particular key combination, and then you can select text on a page and just hit the key combination and have it read to you out loud. And I do that when I surf the web all the time. So I could, for example, go to the Vatican website and get the documents of the Second Vatican Council and simply have them read to me in a web browser. Another thing that you can do is there are text-to-speech engines where you input the text and it will turn it into an MP3 file that you can then listen to on an audio player. And I've done that. I've made lots of MP3 books of texts. There's also another option, which is Logos Bible software. Logos Bible software, which you can learn about at logos.com. And they have a Catholic version called Verbum, which is verbum.com, but it's really all the same software and the same books. It will read anything to you that's in your Logos Verbum library. And they have Fundamentals of Catholic Dogma and they have the documents of the Second Vatican Council, and they have all kinds of other resources. So if you get verbum or logos, you can just, it's as simple as hitting like the Control R function and it'll start reading a text to you. So that's another option for you. And then, and those are options, I've used all of those. But then there's another option, which I've never used because I wasn't blind long enough. And that is, as I'm sure you're aware, there are services that will read books for the blind. And you can request with these services that a particular book be read for you. And, you know, you're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed to give it to other people, but there are reading services for blind individuals, and you could use those services to request the reading of particular texts that you want. So there are quite a number of things, but if you want Kindle books available with text-to-speech turned on, the people you want to talk to are the publishers.
Sean, Jimmy's given you a very thorough answer here. And we are not rich nor influential. However, we do have contacts at the other Catholic publishers. So Ascension, Sophia, TAN, Augustine Institute, if there is a title of theirs, or just generally, if there's something that they're, in general, if you would like to see their stuff in audible format, if you have a way to shoot an email here, or get a message to us, I can put you in touch with the people at those presses that you can get after, and at the USCCB as well on the question of the catechism. But though it sounds like the verbum has probably solved that problem.
There's also one other technique you can use, which I have used in the past, which is buy the book in print and then email the author and say, I have this disability. Can you send me an electronic copy, even if it's a not fully edited manuscript? And then I can use that, like if they send a PDF or a Word document, I can use text-to-speech to read that. And I've had success with that. I've with various books that aren't even available in Kindle, I've gotten a copy of the book, so I'm not denying them a sale. I've even taken a picture of me with the physical book sometimes and sent it to them and say, I have this disability. Could you send me a manuscript? And normally they have no problem doing that. And then I can text to speech from the manuscript.
Okay, Sean, thanks very much. And let's see if we've made some progress here, and call back anytime. 888-318-7884. 888-31-TRUTH. Chris in Ohio, watching on the Catholic Answers YouTube channel. Chris, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, Chris, and just for everyone else who's listening,
we can hear you.
Y'all don't need to ask if we can hear you. If we can't hear you, we'll turn up your volume or ask you to speak louder. Assume we can hear you. Because if everyone asks, can you hear me, it gets a little repetitive.
We have a very sophisticated engineering team here. And yeah, good. All right, Chris, go ahead, brother.
All right. My question is whether it's immoral to check, I have read and understand to documents such as like terms of service and things like that, even though you haven't, based on the fact, considering the fact that they probably don't expect that everyone has read those or fully understands every part of it.
Yeah, so in order for something to now, part of this is going to depend on your theory of lying, but one of the things that everybody agrees to with the theory of lying is that in order to lie to someone, you must minimally intend to deceive that person. And in the case of checking a box that says, I accept the terms of service and I read them and stuff like that, you are not deceiving anybody, because nobody is going to, number one, because nobody is going to read your check. It's not like they have a human at Microsoft who is assigned to do nothing but look at the checks that people put for Microsoft service agreements. Nobody checks that stuff. Everybody it's just an automated process. And machines, a machine will evaluate, did you check the box or not? And then it gives you access to whatever you check the box for. But machines do not have beliefs. Machines are not conscious. Therefore, you are not deceiving anybody by checking that box. Well, what if you later get into a dispute with somebody, and they accuse you of violating terms of service, and they say, here, you checked this box. Do they really believe you checked the box? No. They know you didn't really read the terms of service. They know that nobody does that. With very rare exceptions, it is proverbial that nobody actually reads terms of service before you check the box. So they don't. So even if you were to get into some kind of terms of service dispute, they don't, and they say, look here, you checked the box, you said you read it. They don't believe that you really read it. So you're not deceiving them. And this is what's sometimes called a legimoron. A legimoron is, it's like a law that nobody really expects you to obey, but it creates a legal pretext that can be enforced when there's a problem. And that's all these terms of service checkboxes are meant to do. They give the company that provides the services the ability to address problems that may arise, but they don't really believe you read the terms of service. You don't believe you read the terms of service. So nobody is being deceived here, and therefore on any standard Catholic understanding of lying, there is no lie here.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
All right.
No problem.
888-318-7884. My friends, we're going to take a short break. Before we do, everything at shop.catholic.com is on sale now from 10 to 25% off, including all the books that Jimmy Akin ever wrote for Catholic Answers Press. So head over to shop.catholic.com, fill up your library with books. Right back after this.
Hello, this is Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone of San Francisco. Keep your dial tuned to Catholic Answers Live.
In Morse code, the sequence SOS is a distress call. It's been said that it stands for Save Our Souls. Well, right now our world is in big trouble, and we're putting out an SOS call for help. Will you answer that call? St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, has hundreds of teams who share the good news with souls who don't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization. Visit streetevangelization.com to get involved.
EWTN Global Catholic Network is the largest religious media network in the world. 11 global TV channels, English and Spanish radio networks with over 500 AM and FM radio affiliates, one of the largest Catholic websites in the world, dozens of podcasts every week, social media, electronic and print news services, and EWTN Publishing. EWTN is the global Catholic network. For more about EWTN, visit EWTN.com.
Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, sitting in for Cy Kellett, who's in Perth. He'll be back next week, Perth, Australia, so way far away, but doing a lot of good work. And my guest for the balance of this hour and for the totality of the second hour, Jimmy Akin, senior apologist at Catholic Answers, answering any questions at all that you have about the Catholic faith. We're going to go to Sandra in Texas. Sandra, welcome to Catholic Answers Live. It says here, Sandra, in Texas. Sandra, Texas is a big state. Where in Texas are you?
Bryan.
Okay, very good. So near College Station.
Same thing, Bryan
Right.
College Station.
Okay, very good. All right, well, there's a great student center at Texas A&M there. Catholic Student Center, yeah. All right, what's your question for Jimmy?
Well, I saw him at the conference a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that there's some evidence, or at least I think this is what I understood, about animals having souls. I don't know if he was saying that was going to be coming out on his Mysterious World podcast, or if it's a book he's writing.
Okay, Jimmy.
You want to know more about that?
Yeah.
Well, yes, because my question is, I have a horse that's almost 24 years old that has foundered severely. He's in a lot of pain, but I'm struggling to just put him down because he's in pain. You wouldn't do that to a person. And I asked my Catholic friend last night, who's also a vet, And she said, well, the way I look at it is if he's in that much pain and he's already, quite old, she said it's better to go ahead and be humane to him, and I said, yeah, but how do we just do that, just because he's in pain when people are in pain all the time too, and we don't just get rid of them for no a better reason than that. And she said, well, I look at it like this, people have souls and animals don't. And I said, well, I was at this conference and I heard Jimmy say that there's evidence now leading to the fact that they do. And she's like, ooh, that's going to make me really rethink some things about how I do things also. So
Okay.
I don't remember, and it was not in my notes good where you were going to put that or come out yet.
So we kind of got three things here to address. The first one is where did I talk about this? And the answer is I have talked about it on Mysterious World. It's episode 203. So you can get to that by going to mysterious.fm, like FM radio, mysterious.fm/203. And you can listen to a thorough discussion where I talk about all this. Now let's deal with the soul question, and then we'll go to the euthanasia question. As far as souls, it has always been the standard view that animals have souls. And this has been the case throughout Christian history. So the reason is and this, I can kind of go in different directions, but to keep it short, the Greek philosophers recognized that every living thing has a soul, and it's the soul that makes it alive. So if something doesn't have a soul, it's going to be dead. And we even see that in the book of James, where James says, as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead. So the spirit or soul is the life principle that makes something alive. And if you don't have a soul, then you don't have life. You're just going to be an inert, dead hunk of matter. So everything that's alive has a soul. Now, in the Middle Ages, there was discussion, particularly after the rediscovery of Aristotle's writings, about different types of souls and how they would relate to death. Aristotle categorized souls into three types. He said there are vegetative souls that plants have that allow them to grow and reproduce and have metabolism. Then there are what he called sensitive souls, which animals have, which allow them not only to live and grow and reproduce, but also to sense and feel things and even reason in a primitive way. And then there are what he called rational souls, which humans have, that allow us not only to live, grow, and reproduce, but also allow us to feel and sense things, but also to reason in a human way with rationality. Now, a question then arises of, okay, so if these are these three different types of souls that give an organism its abilities to function, how does this relate to death? Well, St. Thomas Aquinas proposed that you need, and he wasn't the only one, but he did propose that you need a rational soul in order to survive death. And so in Aquinas's view, animals and plants that died, even though they had souls, they wouldn't survive death. So they didn't have an immortal soul. They did have a soul, but not an immortal one, in his view. But you know what? The church has never taught that. So this is not a matter of church teaching. This is a matter of theological opinion. And theological opinions are only as strong as the arguments that support them. So after years of just repeating the standard Thomistic answer on this, I decided to dig into this. And in episode 203 of Mysterious World, I dig into it. I go through the arguments that have been proposed for why you need an immortal soul in order to survive death, and I don't think they work. I don't think they're convincing. What's more, I'm aware of evidence that would suggest that at least some animals do survive death. And in saying that, I'm in agreement with figures like C.S. Lewis and Peter Kreeft, both of whom, Lewis was a Protestant scholar. Kreeft is a Catholic philosopher. And they, among others, have proposed that at least some animals do survive death. But not only has it been proposed by individuals like them, there's actually some evidence of an empirical nature. There is a phenomenon known as a peak in parapsychology, known as a peak in Darien experience. It refers to a line from a poem where you have these Spanish explorers in Panama. They get up to the top of a peak in Darien province, and suddenly, unexpectedly, they see the Pacific Ocean in front of them. Well, in parapsychology, when you study deathbed visions where people are dying and they perceive their loved ones coming to help them cross over into the afterlife and welcome them, or in the case of near-death experiences where someone clinically dies and then they meet their departed loved ones on the other side, sometimes they see something unexpected. Sometimes they see someone they didn't know was dead. So like you could be having a deathbed vision and you see your brother-in-law and it's like, but why am I seeing him? He's still alive. Or you have a near-death experience. You actually, your heart stops and you get greeted by relatives and you see your brother-in-law and you think, well, he's not dead. Only he is. It turns out he did die recently and you just didn't know it. So when if they restart your heart, you come back and you say, I just saw my brother-in-law. And then you find out he's dead. That's what's called veridical information. You brought back information that was true, even though you didn't have any natural way of knowing it. Okay, well, it turns out there are peak in Darien experiences with animals where people die and they'll see their grandmother greeting them in the afterlife, and she's holding their cat. And their cat, they thought, was just at home. They didn't realize their cat had died, but in fact, their cat had died and they just didn't know it. And so when their heart gets restarted, they say, I saw my grandmother in the afterlife and I saw my cat in the afterlife. Well, if near-death experiences that have veridical information can provide evidence that your grandmother still exists, that she is in the afterlife, it's going to imply the same thing is true of your cat. And I did a search of a database of near-death experiences, and like, it depends on how you measure them, but like a quarter of them mention animals in the afterlife: dogs, cats, horses, things like that. So there is actually some experimental evidence or experiential evidence that some animals may survive into the afterlife. If near-death experiences justify the continued existence of your grandmother, they'd also justify the continued existence of your cat. Having said that, what about the euthanasia issue? Here's where there is a difference between humans and animals. Humans have rights, and one of the rights is to not be killed unless we are an aggressor. God has not given human life into our hands. We cannot kill a person unless that person is an aggressor. If they're just an innocent person, we cannot kill them. But animals do not have rights, and God did put them in our hands, which is why we can use animals for a good reason, including taking their lives. We can take the life of an animal, for example, for food. We could take the life of an animal for some other good reason other than it being an aggressor. And so if an animal is suffering tremendously, it is moral, because God put the life of the animal in our hands. It is moral to euthanize the animal. You can't euthanize a human being, but you can euthanize an animal to relieve its suffering. That is not immoral. And if indeed animals have an afterlife, or some of them do, they could even thank you in the afterlife for saying, or for giving them relief from terrible suffering that they don't need to have.
Does that clarify things, Sandra?
Yes, it does.
Appreciate your calling. Call back anytime.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for coming to the conference. We look forward to seeing you next year. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. Jimmy, we're about there we go.
Here we are.
So, because last time I was hosting, I totally biffed the hour there, and I got a dirty look from Zach. So I'm just going to say something here, Jimmy, for the last 30 seconds here before we got to go to break.
Lay it on me.
Oh, okay. Yes, is that from Rona Martin's Laugh-In?
That was Sock It To Me.
Oh, Sock It To Me. Close. My friends, we're going to take a short break. I think it lasts about 5 minutes or 4 or 6. One of those, 5. And then Mario, Jeremy, Daniel, Linda, Will, we're going to answer all your questions. Catholic Answers Live, right back after this. Welcome to the second hour. 888-318-7884. 888-318-7884. My name is Chris Check. I am the president of Catholic Answers. I'm sitting in for Cy Kellett, who's in Perth, Australia, and we'll be back in this chair next week. Coming up on the show tomorrow, 2 hours of Carlo Broussard, including the game show. Very popular. See, Zach, right? It's popular, isn't it? Yeah, Zach's giving me the thumbs up. So tune in for Carlo and the Catholic Answers game show tomorrow. 1 more hour with the great Jimmy Akin, senior apologist at Catholic Answers, answering all your questions. Jimmy, we got a ton of questions. Let's just hit it. What do you think?
Okay.
Jeremy in Dallas, Texas, watching on Twitch. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I have been listening to a couple of different Catholic apologists and, I guess, theologists online, and someone had made the claim that the temple veil that was torn when Christ died on the cross was possibly sewn by his mother Mary when she was a child, and I was wondering if there was any validity to that claim.
Okay, well, if the claim is just that it's possible, I mean, possible can mean a number of different things. In the broadest sense, something is logically possible as long as the terms don't contain a contradiction, like, four-sided triangle or, square circle. And, well, it's certainly logically possible that the Virgin Mary could have sewn that temple veil when she was a child, because there's no logical contradiction involved in making the claim. But that's a separate question from, is it at all probable? Okay, what can we say about that? Well, so I have encountered I have encountered the claim that Christ's mother was a worker, a tapestry worker at the temple. There's even a line to that effect in the 1975 televised version of I, Claudius, when Claudius is getting a briefing about that new Christian movement. But what evidence, that's a work of fiction. So what evidence do we actually have in history that could pertain to this? Well, the only thing that I'm really aware of is in the 2nd century, there was a document known as the Infancy Gospel of James that was produced. It's also known as the Proto-Evangelium of James, but these days most people call it the Infancy Gospel of James. And it deals with events leading up to the birth of Christ. And it includes information, or accounts, I should say, of Mary's childhood. Now, it does say that Mary, because of a special consecration that her parents had made for her, lived in the temple up until the time that she was becoming a young woman, and then she needed a guardian. She couldn't be in the temple anymore because she was going to begin menstruating, which would make her ritually unclean in the Jewish system, and therefore she needed a guardian who could take care of her outside, and that's how she ends up with Joseph. Well, I can imagine, I don't recall the Infancy Gospel saying this, but I could imagine someone saying, well, if she lived in the temple as a little girl, or in the temple complex as a little girl, she must have had some job. She must have been doing something. And working with tapestries is something that perhaps a young girl could do. And so this could be a kind of conjecture to explain what she was doing. And if you conjecture that, you could then conjecture that maybe she worked on the veil of the temple, as opposed to other things like, vestments for priests and things like that. And if you conjecture maybe she worked on the veil of the temple, you could then conjecture, and maybe it was the same veil that got used 30-something years later when Jesus was on the cross and got torn. And you could even find a kind of poetic resonance there, that just like, some people will look at the temple veil as the body of Christ symbolically, and just as his body is being torn on the cross, the veil is being torn. Now, there are other interpretations of what the veil represents, but that's one of them. And so it could be kind of fitting that just as the Virgin Mary in her womb knit together the body of Christ, maybe she knit some of this big, monstrously huge veil that was on the temple. So I can imagine that. I can see why someone would want to claim that, but I don't know that it establishes any kind of probability. We can't say something is probable just because it's a nice poetic idea. And there are several problems. The first one is the infancy gospel of James was written in the 2nd century. It's early enough that it may contain some accurate traditions about the family of Jesus. In fact, I actually think it does. But it also contains things that are clearly embellishments that do not go back to the 1st century. And so I don't know at all about its claim about Mary actually living in the temple. That seems improbable. Then we've got this whole chain of suppositions about, well, what was she doing in the temple? Well, maybe she did woman's work as a tapestry worker, and maybe she worked on the veil, and maybe it was the same veil, and things like that. We have several steps in the chain that would get to this claim being true, and each step introduces new uncertainties. And so when you look at that whole chain of suppositions you've got to make on the basis of a 2nd century document, I would say we have not established a probability here. Is it possible that she could have? Yes. Is it probable that she did? I can't say that. We've got too much uncertainty here.
What do you think, Jeremy?
Wonderful. I knew you two were the men for the job, so I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah, Jimmy did all the heavy lifting there. All right, thanks for calling. Call back anytime. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. A line's going to open up soon. Mario in Albuquerque, New Mexico, watching on Catholic.com. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hey, good to talk to you. Especially Jimmy Aiken, big fan of yours.
Thank you.
Anyway, so thanks. Anyway, you see, I have these friends of mine that are Eastern Orthodox, and one of the things that they claim is that ecumenism is a heresy, and that we should stop with it. I just want to know, why do they say that ecumenism is a heresy, and also what exactly could I do to explain ecumenism better without them thinking that I'm speaking heresy?
Well, okay. So there are a number of ways of approaching this. Part of the issue is complicated by the fact that the Eastern Orthodox community has had a different trajectory for about 1,000 years than the Catholic community has, and that results in we use language somewhat differently. So since the 1700s in the Catholic community, the term heresy has meant something very specific. It has meant the refusal to believe something that the church has infallibly defined to be divinely revealed. And so if you're a Catholic and you want to say someone has committed a heresy, you mean that after baptism, they have, through their own fault, refused to believe something that the church has infallibly defined to be divinely revealed. And that's how we've used the term heresy for a few centuries. But if you go earlier in Catholic history, like say back to the time of Thomas Aquinas, the term was not that specific. It could be used for things that were just viewed as being inconsistent with Christian belief and practice. Now, I don't know how the term heresy is currently used in Orthodox circles, and even if I did, that wouldn't tell me how your friends are using it, because most Catholics don't know the technical definition for heresy that I just gave. They use it more loosely. And your friends could be, or the Eastern Orthodox community more broadly, could be using the term heresy in kind of the medieval sense, where it just refers to anything that's inconsistent with proper Christian belief and practice. So I would say a first thing you want to do in talking to your friends is find out how they're using the term heresy. You could also explain to them how Catholics use it, but you need to find out how they're using it, because that's key to evaluating their view. You also need to figure out what they mean by ecumenism, because ecumenism can mean a number of different things. It can mean, fundamentally, it means promoting unity between Christians. And having a friend who's Orthodox can be seen as an ecumenical effort. So can having a friend who's a Catholic be seen as an ecumenical effort, because you're getting along with other Christians, and that helps build Christian unity. Well, are there versions of ecumenism that are inconsistent with proper Christian belief and practice? Yes, there are. There are some people who will say, I'm doing ecumenism, when they are implying it doesn't matter what kind of Christian you are. That's a position known as indifferentism. And indifferentism is theologically false. It does matter what kind of Christian you are. And so any version of ecumenism that would promote indifferentism would be a false version, and it would be bad, and it would be inconsistent with proper Christian belief and practice. But there are other kinds of ecumenism that don't imply indifferentism, and so that can lead us to ask the question, well, what does the New Testament say on this subject? Chris Check, does the New Testament have anything to say about the value of Christian unity and promoting it?
It's largely in favor. I'd say 100% in favor.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. You read St. Paul, he's regularly telling people to be of one mind and be in agreement with each other. And what does Jesus say about it? Well, among other things, he says, if someone's not against us, then they're for us.
Yes.
And very specifically, if you look in John chapter 17, on the night he was betrayed, Jesus has a big, huge speech. It's actually broader than John 17, but that's one of the key parts of it. It runs from like John 13 to John 18. Jesus has this big, huge speech about Christian love and Christian unity, and I pray that the world will know you're my followers by your love from one another, and I pray that to my Father that you all may be one as my Father and I are one. He's got this big honking stress on it. So it's pretty clear that the New Testament is in favor of promoting Christian unity. And that means some version of ecumenism must be true. We do have an obligation to promote Christian unity. The question is, how do you go about it? And are you going about it the right way? But we should be able to all agree that, yes, we do have a duty to try to repair breaches of unity in Christ's community. So I think if you put it to your friends in that way, it may become a little more intelligible for them. That's separating, how they may be understanding ecumenism from the need to promote Christian unity through means including things like evangelization.
Okay, Mario?
I very, very much appreciate that.
No problem.
I guess one thing I would mention is that whenever I mention about ecumenism, usually in the sense of like other religions that aren't Christian.
Oh, that's not ecumenism. Yeah. That's interreligious dialogue. That is a different thing.
Yeah.
So you want to distinguish those.
I guess.
Also, another point I would make is even if your friends are very down on ecumenism, there are other Orthodox who aren't, like the Patriarch of Constantinople and other Orthodox are actively engaged in dialogue and trying to establish friendly relations with Catholics and other Christians, including Oriental Orthodox and other folks.
Mario, we got to go to a break. I appreciate the question. Please call back anytime. 888-318-7884 to talk to Jimmy Akin. There's going to be a line open here soon. My friends, everything is on sale at shop.catholic.com from 10 to 25%. But also, there are things that are on sale for just $1, and that includes the entire 20 Answers catalog. So 20 Answers, that's what we call them. So all the 20 Answers booklets are on sale, and also all of our ebooks are on sale. That's 100 titles just for $1. Right back after this.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
Do you have a question but prefer to ask it privately? Catholic Questions can help. Go to CatholicQuestions.com to ask your question online, email us, drop us a letter, or give us a call. Longtime Catholic Answers Live apologist and author Jim Blackburn or another Catholic Questions apologist will be happy to assist you. Catholic Questions proudly supports Catholic Answers Live, so visit us at CatholicQuestions.com today. That's CatholicQuestions.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I don't like looking back. I prefer to look forward and keep moving forward. There's plenty to cover. I do a lot of research and try to dig out the bits and pieces of a life or of an agenda that people don't want to talk about.
The World Over with Raymond Arroyo. Tonight, 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio and Television.
Catholic Answers Live. Chris Check in for Cy Kellett. Cy will be back on Monday. Jimmy Aiken knocking all the questions out here with skill and aplomb and knowledge and insight and wit. Daniel in Texas, listening on 88.5 FM. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live. Daniel, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked the other nice lady from Texas. Texas is a big state. Where do you live?
Actually, I'm in Bryan, College Station.
Oh, my gosh. That's two calls from Bryan. Yeah, very good. All right, how can we help you, brother?
And it's,
go ahead.
Okay, I have a question in reference to, I've heard and I haven't found it, that Jesus Christ, I want to know the church that he actually founded. And I heard that it was the Catholic Church that he founded. And where in the Bible can I find that? And if I find it, in fact, it's in the Bible, why isn't all the world Catholic? In other words, if you read the Bible, you read, and that's God's word, and I believe it. If it's in the Bible, I believe it. So if it's in the Bible that the Catholic Church was the church that Jesus founded, why isn't the whole world Catholic?
Okay. Well, let's start where Jesus talks about his church. He actually only mentions it using the word church in a few places, and they're both in the Gospel of Matthew. In Matthew 16, Jesus is talking to St. Peter, and he says, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And so we can learn a few things from this. Now, the name Peter means rock. So what he probably said in Aramaic, using the Aramaic form of Peter's name, was you are Kepha. Kepha means rock. It also means Peter. And on this Kepha, I will build my church. So he's saying that he's going to build his church on Peter. And he also says there's going to be one church. He doesn't say, I'm going to build my churches. So he's envisioning one church that he's going to build in a special way on Peter. And he says the gates of hell are not going to prevail against it. And that means his church is never going to die. So Jesus established a church in the first century in a special way on St. Peter, and that church must exist today because he said that it would never die. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. He later tells the 12, actually, I'm going to be with you forever. So to the end of the world. So his church, he's going to be with his church to the end of the world. And so it must exist today. And we can deduce a few other things about this church, but let's for the moment stick with what we've got. Well, it's built on Peter, and it's existed since the first century. Are there any churches? Now, Peter obviously died, but are there any churches that have a successor of Peter? Well, there's one. It's the Catholic Church. When Peter died, just like the other apostles died, they passed the governance of the church on to the bishops. And since Peter was the Bishop of Rome, he passed on his office to the new Bishop of Rome, who was a guy named Linus. And it's been passed down ever since. And that's why the Bishop of Rome today we refer to as the Pope. And so the Pope is the successor of Peter. And his authority goes back to Jesus' statement to Peter that he was going to build the church on him. So that's a basic sketch of the continuity between the Catholic Church uniquely and the church that Jesus founded in the first century. Other churches do not have this successor of Peter. If you look at other churches that have split off from the Catholic Church over the years, they'll all say, yeah, we don't have a successor of Peter. We don't have a pope. And so the Catholic Church uniquely is built on Peter in the way that Jesus talked about, of having Peter as its leader or Peter's successor now that Peter is passed on. So how did we get the term Catholic? Well, originally it wasn't necessary. The term Catholic, it comes from a Greek term, katholikos, which means universal. And originally, you didn't need a special name for Jesus's church. It was just, yeah, this is the church. It's Jesus's church. It's the church he founded. But eventually, the need for a name arose. And the reason for that is that by the late first century, you started having groups split off from Jesus's church. These groups could adopt the teachings of a particular heretic, and they might be known by the heretic's name. So the people who followed the heretic Marcion were known as Marcionites. Or they might be known by their particular belief. Like there was a group of heretics that split off who said Jesus only seemed to be a man. Well, in Greek, the word for he wasn't really a man. He was really God, but he only appeared to be a man. That was like an illusion. And so since they said he seemed to be like God, he seemed to be a man, well, in Greek, the word for to seem is dokein. And so they became known as the Docetists. And then there were other heresies that were located in particular places. Like there's a location in Turkey, modern Turkey, but back then it was called Phrygia. And so if heretics arose in Phrygia, you could call them Phrygians. And so you had all these different groups splitting off. Sometimes they were named after a person. Sometimes they were named after a doctrine. Sometimes they were named after a place. And they therefore had their own names. But now, how do you refer to Jesus's overall church? You know, not one of these little sects, but how do you refer to the original, to the one Jesus founded? Well, because it was everywhere, in contrast to these little bitty sects that were arising here and there, the term Catholicos or Catholic or universal got used for it. And in the late first century, that's when they started using this term. We know that because the term Catholic Church is being used at the beginning of the second century. So it must have arisen in the late first century. So by the late first century, enough little groups were splitting off of the Catholic Church that you needed to give it a name to distinguish it from all these local little bitty groups. And unfortunately, in the course of the last 2,000 years, people have continued to split off from the church. And the splits have adopted names, and sometimes they're named after the leader who founded them, like Lutherans. Sometimes they're named after a doctrine, like Baptists. Sometimes they're named after a place, like Anglicans, who are named after England. So the same thing has happened throughout church history that was happening in the late first century. When people would split off from the Catholic Church, they would get a new name, and the Catholic Church remained as the church that had been founded by Christ and that didn't split off from anything. And because it is found everywhere in the Christian world, it's not a little local sect, it's called the Universal Church or the Catholic Church. And that's why both it's called the Catholic Church, and where it's founded founding is discussed in the Bible, and why not everybody is a Catholic, because people have split off through free will.
How's that, Daniel?
That's a lot, but it makes a lot of sense.
Dan-
It sure clears up what I was thought about.
Okay,
What I thought it was.
Daniel, if I want you to give your name and your mailing address to Edgar, the call screener, and there's 2 books that we're going to send you. One is by Jimmy. It's called "The Bible is a Catholic Book," and that will help you understand, in fact, where the Bible came from. And the other is called Pope Peter, and it's by our friend and colleague Joe Heschmeyer, who's an apologist here at Catholic Answers, and that will give you some explanation into the papacy and how it continues to this very day. 888-318-7884. Everything's on sale at shop.catholic.com, including all the 20 Answers titles for just $1. That is an amazing deal, my friends. There's a 20 Answers book about practically everything you want to know something about. Shop.catholic.com. Right back after this.
When the resurrected Jesus appeared to disciples on the road to Emmaus, they didn't recognize him until the breaking of the bread. The same is true today. In the Holy Eucharist, we really meet Jesus. In The Eucharist is Really Jesus, author Joe Heschmeyer explains how knowing Jesus in the Eucharist is the key to understanding all of Christian faith. Order your copy of The Eucharist is Really Jesus today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore.
Our Lord needs articulate defenders of the truth to spread the joy of the Catholic faith. Catholic Answers monthly giving club, Society 315, helps you fulfill the call in 1 Peter 3:15 to always be prepared to make a defense for the hope that is in you. For as little as $10 a month, you'll help Catholics grow in faith, bring lapsed Catholics home, and lead non-Catholics to the truth. Go to casociety315.com and join today.
Is relativism dead? It sure seems dead. Each day, new moral demands are made, and they are presented to us as absolutes. Everything, from transgender ideology to physician-assisted suicide, is presented as a moral good that all right-thinking people must accept. But Catholic Answers' own Carlo Broussard says look deeper, and you will see today's moralism is just relativism dressed up in new clothes. Carlo's eye-opening book, The New Relativism, shines a light on how the sacred moral teachings of this age cover up a deep denial of moral truth. Order your copy of The New Relativism today at shop.catholic.com and be prepared to defend the truth against aggressive relativism. The New Relativism at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Thursday Groovy Music at Catholic Answers Live. 888-318-7884. There's a line open. That's a rare thing when Jimmy Akin is on the air answering questions, but there is one line open right now, my friends. Get your question answered before the end of the hour. Jimmy, let's continue to march towards the sound of the guns, as we used to say in the artillery. Linda in Chicago, Illinois, listening on 9:50 a.m. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hello. My question is, would I be opening myself up to the demonic if I go to a haunted house attraction, the kind where, actors are dressed up and, they wear makeup, not the kind that claim there's actual ghosts, but the kind where you buy an admission and you get, you basically pay to get scared?
To get scared, yes.
Is that recommended?
Okay, so I'm glad you clarified that, because that was going to be my first question, was what type of haunted house are we talking about? And it sounds like we're talking about a Halloween attraction that no one has ever claimed there's really anything haunted happening here. It's just getting scared for fun. Well, there's nothing wrong with getting scared for fun. In fact, there is a basis in human nature that God put in us to enjoy getting scared for fun, because in life there are things we're going to have to face that will be scary, and we need to know how to handle ourselves emotionally when we encounter something scary for real. something that's actually scary and actually dangerous. So we need to practice before we get into dangerous situations. We need to practice what it's like to have fear in safe situations. And that's what drives a whole bunch of different human activity. And it's not just humans. You see the same thing in other creatures like puppies and kittens, because they play fight. Well, as adult dogs and cats, they're going to be in real dangerous situations. They're going to be in fights with other dogs and cats. So they need to get ready for those by having safe simulations of danger, which is why they play fight as puppies and kittens. But in order to get them to do that, in order to get them to practice for when they're in real danger, the play simulated sessions that are safe need to be fun. And so puppies and kittens have it programmed into them to engage in safe simulations of danger and find it fun so that they're ready as adults to face real danger. And the same thing is something God put in us. That's why little boys play cops and robbers and other games. It's why adults and children as well enjoy fiction. Because if you think about any story, no matter what it is, if it's an interesting story, there's some kind of danger in it. There has to be some stakes that we want our characters to achieve or avoid or something. There has to be something at risk in order for a story to be interesting. And so we are programmed to enjoy safe simulations of danger. That's what play is. That's what fiction is. And that includes horror fiction. Well, when you go to a haunted house of the type we've just been discussing, there's nothing supernatural going on in this haunted house. It's a simulation of scary stuff. It's a kind of enacted, immersive horror fiction. And so there's nothing wrong with getting scared for fun. We're programmed to get scared for fun so that we know how to handle ourselves and how to handle the emotion of fear if we encounter real danger in life. So it doesn't matter what guise they're using in the haunted house. There's nothing in principle wrong with it. It's just another form of entertainment. It's just like watching a movie or reading a book or playing a game. They all are the same fundamental thing, simulated danger that we find fun in order to prepare us for real danger. Now, you said a fake haunted house, but some people are going to be wondering, can I go to a real haunted house? Well, yeah, sure. There are places where God allows the souls of departed people to show up, often to ask for prayers. That's the classic Catholic understanding of what ghosts are. All the way back through history, it's like, okay, if it's not a saint and it's showing up, it's probably a soul that's in purgatory that needs some prayers, and God sometimes allows them to manifest. And we don't want to hide our heads from such things. We should face them. Is there some chance you might encounter a demon? Well, sure, but there's some chance you'll encounter a demon no matter where you go. But it's not worth worrying about unless you have evidence that there's a demon somewhere. And if you don't have evidence of a demon, you don't need to be overly scared of stuff, including actual ghosts that may just want your prayers.
Okay, Linda?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Call back anytime. Will in Columbus, Ohio, listening on St. Gabriel Radio. Welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my call. Jimmy, it's a real honor. I'm a convert in some part because of your work. So let me pose to you what I hope will be a kind of fun question. Earlier, you were talking about animal souls, and I want to ask about the theological implications of animal death prior to the fall of our first parents. It's, I think, a given that death is the result of sin, but in as much as the Catholic faith is not in tension with the theory of evolution, we have to believe that there's all manner of death taking place for hundreds of thousands of years. And I'm just wondering how you wanted to try to, the best way you think Catholics can square that circle.
So I understand the impulse that people have to try to say there was no death before the fall, but the Bible never says that. It's a misreading of the Bible. What the Bible does say, and of course this text is using some symbolic language, but if you go back to Genesis, it says that Adam and Eve had access to the tree of life, and as long as they had access to the tree of life, they wouldn't have to die. So presumably they'd keep eating from the tree of life and they'd keep living. But then because they sinned, they lost access to the tree of life, and therefore they ended up dying. It doesn't say anything about lions eating from the tree of life, or lions being vegetarian before the fall, or anything like that. So the only kind of death that the Bible says didn't happen before the fall is human death, because we had access, under whatever the symbol means, to the tree of life. And this is not something new. This is not some new idea to square evolution with the Bible. This is something that theologians have been aware of all the way down the line. For example, 800 years ago, before the scientific revolution, Thomas Aquinas talked about the fact that every natural system that is not propped up by grace will end up running down and breaking down. And so all creatures were prone to death, or corruptible, in his words, except for humanity. Now, today, we have a name for the principle that Aquinas is articulating. We call it entropy. Entropy is the tendency of a system to run down or break down over time, put in simple terms. And Aquinas recognized that the universe we're living in is subject to entropy. And you know who else recognized that, even though they didn't use the term? The author of Genesis. Because the author of Genesis, no matter what you interpret the symbols as meaning, depicts stars as shining before the fall and Adam and Eve as needing food before the fall. Well, stars don't shine if energy doesn't dissipate from a concentrated state to a diffuse state, which is entropy. And humans don't need food unless they run down in energy levels and need to replenish that, which is also due to entropy. So no matter how you interpret the symbolism in early Genesis, the author is even if you take it purely literally, the author is envisioning a universe that is already subject to entropy prior to the fall. The only reason that humans were an exception to the law of entropy was because we had access to the tree of life that would have allowed us to remain immortal. Okay, so I think with Aquinas, death did occur before the fall. Aquinas says the nature of animals wasn't any different. Lions were predators before the fall, and they would try to eat gazelles. And, tyrannosaurs were predators before the fall, and they would try to eat brontosauruses or whatever. And so I think that there's been a mistake on the part of many commentators in reading the Bible, in thinking it's talking about more than human death. It actually never does that. It never says more than humans were immortal, and consequently for non-humans, death is not a consequence of the fall. And even if you take it fully literally, Genesis depicts a universe that's subject to entropy, and it doesn't say anything about animals not being predators back then. So I think it all harmonizes very nicely.
Okay, Will, do you accept that?
I think that's an acceptable hypothesis. It leaves a lot of suffering that is distressing. But it's a good read, and I hope you enjoyed the question. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, no problem. And Will, I'll recommend something else to you. We talked about this in the previous hour, but in terms of suffering, now I gave a talk on suffering, and I even talked about animal suffering in this talk at our recent conference. Eventually that's going to come out on YouTube and you can watch that. But in the meantime, I'd suggest you check out episode 203 of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. You can get to it by going to mysterious.fm/203. It's about animal afterlife. Because if it turns out that animals have an afterlife, then they're in the same position that we are with respect to the problem of suffering. No matter, as St. Paul says, no matter what we suffer in this life, it's finite. And God will more than make it up to us in the next life with an infinite heaven, and that will go on forever. And so the pleasure of heaven is going to be infinite, and that outweighs vastly anything we suffer in this life. And if animals have an afterlife, the same thing is true of them. No matter what they may have suffered in this life, God can more than make it up to them in the next.
Kevin, Richard, Lydia, Tom, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with your questions.
Hang on. Catholic Answers Live will return in a moment.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
One of the biggest mistakes a Christian can make is to try to do good without God's help. St. Therese said, when we trust only ourselves and not God, our soul becomes incapable of virtue. Her remedy? Works of charity. And the greatest work of charity is to share the gospel. At St. Paul Street Evangelization, a Catholic nonprofit, we encourage you to share the gospel with someone who doesn't know Jesus. Catholic Answers is supported in part by St. Paul Street Evangelization, streetevangelization.com.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
On Mother Angelica Answering the Call, Father Joseph and Doug Keck mine decades of phone calls answered by Mother Angelica. Mother dishes out teaching, advice, laughter, and plenty of prayers as she takes calls from her family.
Mother Angelica Answering the Call, Sunday afternoon, 2 Eastern, on EWTN Radio.
(888) 318-7884, Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Aiken. We're gonna knock these questions out, Jimmy. Kevin in Lexington, Kentucky, watching on the Catholic Answers YouTube channel, curated by the great Zach Maxwell. Kevin, what's your question?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. So I am not Catholic, but I have Catholic family members who sometimes try to talk to me about reasons why maybe I should be Catholic. One of those reasons that they often cite is the miracle at Fatima. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on Fatima, and it seems like it doesn't line up with what my family was saying, so I want to ask you if I'm missing anything. So they spoke about prophecies, namely the prophecy that the cousins of Sister Lucia, Francisco and Jacinta, would die soon, and sure enough they did. Also the prophecy that World War I would end soon, sure enough it did, and then a worse war would start later, and of course World War II did start later. Only problem is that when I looked into it, it turns out that the prophecies were made roughly 10 years after Francisco and Jacinta died, and then the World War II prophecy was made in 1941, 2 years after the start of World War II. Also, when I looked into the actual event in October 1917, it's certainly impressive. At least a few dozen people saw the sun dance, but that seems different than what my parents were telling me about how everybody in a crowd of 100,000 people saw it. So I guess, am I missing something, or is there maybe a misunderstanding?
Okay, so I guess I can say a few things. First one, when I am talking to someone about why I would suggest that they be Catholic, I don't typically cite private revelation, including Fatima, because private revelation is not obligatory even for Catholics. It's open to more question than that. So I wouldn't say it has no evidential value, but I think there are better things to focus on that have more apologetic value than private revelations for most people. So I wouldn't tend to appeal to Fatima as a reason to be Catholic. But in terms of the things you mentioned, well, I need to modify what you said a little bit. You said that the prophecy of Francisco and Jacinta's death wasn't made until 10 years afterward, and the World War II prophecy wasn't made until substantially after that. That needs to be rephrased. The claim that Sister Lucia made was that back in 1917, they were given these she and the others were given these prophecies that Francisco and Jacinta would die soon, which they did due to the Spanish flu, and that if people didn't stop sinning, a worse war would break out, even though the current war was going to end soon. What happened was these were not recorded until later. Sister Lucia's claim was that she was given them earlier, and it just took a while before they got written down and documented. So it's not that they were made at these later times, it's that they were recorded at these later times. And that does mean that there's more of a question about them, because I could make up a prophecy now and say, oh, I was given this back in the 1970s when I was a little kid. And you'd have to say, well, how trustworthy is Jimmy Akin? Could he be lying about this? Because this prophecy he says he was given when he was a little kid hasn't been documented up to now. We don't have proof that the prophecy was made back then. And so you'd have to decide, well, what do you think about me? Am I being truthful about this or not? In the same way, you'd have to say, well, do we think Sister Lucia is being truthful about this prophecy, or would she be making it up for some reason? Well, one of the ways of trying to figure that question out is by looking at other data that we have about Fatima, like the miracle of the sun. Was it witnessed by multiple independent observers? And we don't want to exaggerate the number of independent observers, but there is evidence that, yeah, it was viewed by multiple independent observers. And so that would establish, if that's true, that something preternatural, something paranormal was happening in 1917 in connection with Fatima. But then there's something else, which is the third part of the secret of Fatima. That third part was not written down until the 1940s, when Sister Lucia got sick and it was feared that she might die without revealing what the third part of the secret was. So she was ordered by her bishop to write it down. It was then taken to the Vatican and stored there until the year 1999, when it was published. And it turned out that the third part of the secret of Fatima, or the so-called third secret, involved an assassination attempt on the Pope. And back in 1981, on May 13th, the anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima, John Paul II was giving an audience in St. Peter's Square, and in connection with the audience, he was being driven around in the Pope Mobile, which at the time was not armored, and there was an assassination attempt on him, and he almost died. And while he was recovering in the hospital, he decided, maybe I should look at that third secret of Fatima. So he contacted the officials at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, and they brought him the third secret, and he read it, and he realized there was an assassination attempt on me, the Pope, that is described in visionary terms. It's not a videotape account, but there's an assassination attempt on me, the Pope, that's in this prophecy, and the assassination attempt happened on the anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima. Wow, that's significant. And so he concluded, this prophecy has been fulfilled. And this prophecy, even though it wasn't publicized until 1999, he realized this has been fulfilled in 1981, and this prophecy was recorded before it was fulfilled, because it was recorded when Sister Lucia got sick back in the 1940s. So this coincidence of the Pope, or coincidence, two things coinciding, of an assassination attempt on the Pope on the anniversary of Our Lady of Fatima in the third part of the secret of Our Lady of Fatima, which had been documented previously, that's also evidence that something supernatural is going on in connection with this. And so I would say, well, even though, Sister Lucia is a nun and she lived a life that was very humble in a monastery. She did not go out and interact and get adulation by the public. She didn't get rich. She's living a very strict life in a monastery, and she doesn't have an incentive, therefore, to lie about the earlier prophecies about the war or about Francisco and Jacinta. And we've got evidence in the form of the miracle of the sun that something supernatural was happening. And we've got evidence in the form of the third part of the secret that something supernatural was happening. I would say we've got some reason to trust Sister Lucia. So even though I don't think that this proves the Catholic faith, I do think that we have evidence that even though these predictions weren't written until later, that we do have reason to take Sister Lucia and her accounts seriously.
Okay, Kevin, we're going to try to answer a few more questions, but if you give your address to Edgar, we're going to send you Trent Horn's book, Why We're Catholic, and we're happy that you're exploring the claims of the Catholic faith.
Also, I've done 3 episodes on Fatima on Mysterious World. They're episodes 40, 63, and 64. So just go to mysterious.fm/40 or /63 or /64, and you can listen to my in-depth analysis.
We're going to go to Lydia in Rochester, Minnesota. Lydia, welcome to Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, I'm in 7th grade, and I'm at a Catholic school. Today, my religion teacher told our class that Jesus was not born on December 25th. Is that true?
Why did your teacher say that? Did she offer any reason for this claim?
He said that because there was a star website and it told you the day where the star was.
Yeah, I understand where he's coming from. So the church does not have a teaching about what day of the year Jesus was born on. We use Christmas at December 25th as a date to celebrate his birth, but the church doesn't teach exactly when he was born. So that's something people can have differences of opinion about. Sometimes you hear arguments that he couldn't have been born on December 25th that don't work, like it was too cold for sheep. But, sheep are actually covered in wool. They do outside just fine in the cold. So that argument really doesn't work. But it sounds like your teacher is a fan of the Star of Bethlehem documentary that also has an accompanying website. And I think that that website has some good arguments, but it's not perfect. So I would say your teacher is within the realm of legitimate opinion to think that Jesus may have been born on another day. He's not contradicting the church or the Bible or anything like that. But I would also say it's not proved that Jesus was born on this other day. So I think we need to be open and not really worry too much about it, because what's important is that we recognize what Jesus did for us, and we do that, for example, on December 25th. We do it on other days of the year too, but we do it in a special way on December 25th. And even if that's not the day he was born, we're still worshiping him and honoring him for what he did for us.
Lydia, we're going to try to get one more question in. Thanks for calling. Richard in Virginia, if you ask your question very quickly, we can probably give you a quick answer.
Oh, this is a long question.
Okay, let me sum up then. It says, Richard, you're a first-time listener. Thanks for calling. It says, why doesn't the Pope approve of Medjugorje? Well, so the Pope, actually starting with Pope Benedict, had a commission look into Medjugorje, and that commission's results have not been made public yet. But one of the things that it's reported the commission did was draw a distinction between the earliest apparitions of Medjugorje and the later ones. And it apparently, at least this is what's reported, it's been said that they found some evidence that the early apparitions at Medjugorje might be legitimate, but the later apparitions, they did not find evidence that they were legitimate. Personally, Pope Francis has been skeptical of Our Lady showing up thousands of times, which is what's reported in the case of Medjugorje. But we'll have to wait and see what eventually gets announced, if anything.
Richard, I recommend the work to you of a man named Kevin Simons, Symonds. It's very sober on Medjugorje. Tom in Iowa, give your address to Edgar. There's 2 books I want to send you. Jimmy Aiken, great job. 2 hours, brilliant answers. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I think
My
I learned
pleasure.
I learned a ton every time. All right, my friends, Carlo Broussard with the game show in 23 hours. And Cy Kellett back in this chair in 4 days, 5 days, Monday.
Maybe.
All right, God bless.